All right, hello. I wanted to throw a quick intro on this one because we recorded in kind of a funny way. Or I'm dividing it up. We recorded it all at once, but this feels like a standalone piece, so I'm putting it by itself. And because in the first episode we touched on some subjects, and I feel like we were afraid that we kind of softballed it a little bit, and so we wanted to just be very clear about how we feel about all these things. And so concerning the Confederate flag, spoiler alert, displaying the Confederate flag is always bullshit. And so we unpack that a little bit and how we feel about it and why we feel that way. And I give examples from when I grew up and the environment I was in as a kid. So there's really nothing ambiguous or unclear about any of that. And the next part is the next part is a little more subtle. And so we're just trying to reflect on and consider what happens whenever when you're not exposed to Black artists, whenever you are forming your tastes, how does that affect things? And, of course there's no one clear answer because this isn't science in that way. But I think it's important questions to ask and to think about. And because your opinions and what you're taught, and when you grow up in these environments that we are all in under, institutional racism, historical racism, and all that, where there are all these choices being made that are not necessarily our own, that it affects what we're exposed to. It affects what we see as valuable. It affects what we see as intricate, as intellectual, as meaningful. And that can affect how we see other groups of people. And that's really the idea. You're not going to find any hot takes in this. I'm not trying to be controversial or I'm just trying to be clear. So this is, these are ideas that are pretty standard, coming from a standard, anti-racism point of view, doing my best with that. And so, but that topic is a little messy and a little tricky. And so if there's any of you out there that agree with my first point and are on board with me with that, and are still here for that, and there's some things that I get wrong, or stumble a little bit, or maybe just something that doesn't, I don't know, maybe something came across different in a way that I intended, then let me know, hit me in some comments or something, because I would like to hear from you. If you're going to respond with racism, with like some triggered white man stuff, then there's plenty of other spaces for you to do that. You're not going to like my show. So that's really it. If you're going to respond with that energy, that vibe, that typical triggered white man stuff, then my show's probably not for you. Not everything's for you, kiddo. So there's plenty of other stuff out there for you. So this ain't it. Because I talk about racism, because I care, because it's an important issue and I care about it. So, yeah, I think I just want to give a quick little. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. being a fly on the wall while Robert and I unpack these things, try to articulate how we feel. So anyway, adios, guys.
1, 2, 3. That's what you do on a podcast, right?
I think so. All right, so here we are. This is the Richard Wooten podcast, episode 2. What's the date?
August 13th.
August 13th. Cool.
It was a Friday.
Yeah, so we're recording this on August 13th. And I'm going to address the elephant in the room. This is not a funny thing. So if you know me, you know that my mother just recently passed away, and I just wanted to address that and mention it, because I don't know, if you know anything about my life and you're listening to this podcast, you would expect me to mention it. I feel so. I'm mentioning it.
I mean, hell, if you listen to the first episode of this podcast, you may have heard some things about.
Yeah, I am so incredibly grateful that we decided to do that episode when we decided to do it, because she was in the hospital at the time, but she was fine when we did that. So it'll be I'm excited to listen back to it because I feel like it's going to be a really nice snapshot. But I don't really want to go too much into, because my mother is so influential on me, especially, and my experience with music and my life. And I haven't really processed much because I've been so busy. So I don't really, at some point I want to really unpack all that. And, but tonight is not the night. But I just wanted to address that. And, but yeah. And so we're going to kind of continue on with what our normal plans were, because that's what my mother would want.
She'd want you rolling down the road.
She'd want me to criticize some subtle things. So, on the last episode, we were talking about the musical environments that we grew up in. And so we we mentioned some things concerning racism, specifically the Confederate flag, because
showing up in all sorts of places,
in all sorts of places, and explicitly on this Alabama album cover. And so I wanted to sort of just kind of bring that up and sort of address some of that stuff, do like a little addendum, because I feel like I was kind of softball, being, like kind of skirting around that, like maybe being a little bit of a Confederate flag apologist. And that's not how I feel. And I just want to just take this chance to like absolutely
stomp that motherfucker out is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. Like stomp that shit out and say that it's not like that. There's no ounce or fiber in my being that thinks that using the Confederate flag or displaying it in any way, shape, or form is okay.
Yep.
It's not negotiable. I don't care. And so yeah. So now, so a little bit of context. So this is why I feel that way about the Confederate flag. Now, am I trying to say that Alabama are a bunch of violent racists? Absolutely not. Am I saying that people...
I don't think so, anyway.
I don't know that they're not.
Shit, man. These days...
You've seen that guy's mud. Look at this. That's the mustache of a murderer.
It's the mullet of a madman.
And so, like, I'm not trying to say that if someone displays a Confederate flag, or if they look at it and have a positive emotion, that incriminates them of being a violent racist. That's not what I am saying. But I think the bigger issue is that maybe you saw that flag growing up, and maybe that's not what it meant to you. Maybe it didn't mean something racist to you. It was just sort of a thing that you saw, And so you have like a nostalgic attachment to it. You saw it on the top of Dukes of Hazzard, or you saw it on Dimebag's guitar, or wherever you saw it, or you saw it on a patch on your dad's jacket, like I did.
Like you saw it in places where you assumed, well, if this person has this on them, or near them, or with them, or whatever, this is in this place that I feel safe in, that I feel welcome in, then it must not be a bad thing, right? Maybe I don't know what it means necessarily, but it can't be that bad, right?
Right. It's like seeing, it's like seeing like the Footprints poem, like the, like just
go on,
just stuff that you see around when you're growing up, and it's like, oh, well, I see crosses, I see the like, and when there was one set of steps, it's because I carried you, and I see a Confederate flag. You know what I mean? And it's just all sort of part of the decorum of how you're growing up. It's just a background noise. It doesn't, you didn't choose to see it, and it's sort of it's just there, right?
That's really weird. The Footprints thing is like, is that a Southern thing, you think?
I have no idea.
That shit was everywhere. Absolutely.
And so, but this is the thing. Someone at some point who displayed that Confederate flag, maybe it was your dad, maybe it was your mom, maybe it was your grandpa, maybe it was your great-grandpa, maybe it was your neighbor, maybe it was your uncle. Yeah. Someone put that flag up because they had a problem with black people. And there's no way around that. There's no way around that. Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe you didn't. Maybe that's not what it means to you. But at some point, that's what it meant to someone, and that's why you saw it in the first place. And so,
right.
You said something about like seeing it around in a place that you feel safe, and so you assume, and that I feel like that's really the nail on the head, because where I grew up in not just Dayton, but a small town outside of Dayton. Okay. And
you grew up in the Dayton to Liberty's Dayton.
Yeah. I grew up in Kennefic.
Yeah. If you're not from there, you don't really know what the hell that means, but
right. Yeah. My zip code, my mailing address was still Dayton. I still went to Dayton schools. There's not a post office out there, but it is a different area. And so, and I also, and so when we moved out there in 1989, there was, when you go over the tracks, this is a story my mom told me, like when you go over the tracks past where we lived, there was a sign that had a noose nailed to it that said, this is the only way that insert racial slur leaves Kennefic. Okay? That's 1989. That's not 1952 Alabama. Okay? That's 1989.
Right.
Okay? So there's one little piece of information to sort of put on the board. Okay? There's one little reference point. Okay? A second reference point is that in high school, I delivered pizzas. Okay? So I saw all the neighborhoods in like a 12-mile radius, because that's how pizza delivery works in small towns, if you don't know.
More or less, yeah.
And you would see Confederate flags in people's yards. Not a big deal. It sort of had like the equivalent, like if I drive around a lot of neighborhoods in Houston, you see like UT or LSU or
right, Texas A&M or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my team.
That's probably a good way of saying it, probably.
And I have to tell you, a disproportionate amount, the majority of those flags, not all of them, but most of them, were on the other side of those tracks. Okay? Now, that was 15 years later. That sign with the noose in 89 wasn't there for long, right? But, and so, and then here, these, I'm kind of jumping around in time a little bit, but the point I'm getting to is that if you have those flags displayed, does everyone who displays a Confederate flag, are they a violent racist? No. But you are helping to create a space that feels safe.
Right.
for violent racists. Someone who feels safe enough to take a noose, to buy some rope, to make it into a noose, to nail it to a sign, to put it on a public piece of land, to write on it, and for it to be left there. And Confederate flags contribute to creating that environment. And yeah, maybe you didn't feel safe, but I guarantee you that black people would not have felt safe where I grew up.
Correct.
And here's a very tangible example of that. So in like around 1993, some friends of the family were over at our house and we were eating in the front yard. And, the dad looks at my mom, and he says, hey, Terry, do you think this is a good idea for us to be eating outside like this? And my mom was confused. She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, we're in Kinnifick. And we're black. Mom's like, oh, shut up. No one cares. Okay? That night, there's a message on our answering machine. Okay? Threatening us that if they ever see N-words, blah, 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 in our yard again, blah, 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 blah. Okay? This is real. I'm not making this up. Okay? This is the real background of my childhood. Okay? These are real things. Okay? So in a place where Confederate flags are prominently displayed, are you going to tell me it's a coincidence that in a place where Confederate flags were not uncommon to see, where it was not uncommon to see for a noose to be nailed to a sign, that someone, and you've seen my street, there's like there's 6 houses on that street. One of our neighbors,
It's not hard to figure out when that happens.
saw us having a meal with our family friends who happened to be black, told one of their friends who found our number and felt empowered enough. They felt safe enough in this environment to call a stranger's house and threaten us, a widow and her child. Why? Because we were friends with black people in Kinnifick, and that was enough to threaten us. So this Confederate flag business, that's the legacy it creates. That's what it's a part of.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that they changed that album cover over time, or somebody made them. I think probably more to the point.
I know nothing about Alabama as individuals other than I absolutely love their fucking music. That's all I know.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea. I don't.
Oh, okay, I thought that was the thing. What
do you mean?
That somebody had forced that to happen?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea. For all I know, I don't know when the album cover was changed, because this is first pressing, man. This is OG, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So I don't know, man. They might have called him up. They might have called him up in '92 and been like, "This is bullshit. We gotta change this." I don't know.
A few weeks later, yeah, sure.
I don't know.
Was it a fact that somebody told somebody that told somebody, like a fucking game of telephone, the fact that black people were at your house?
Okay, so I don't know that that's a fact because I don't know who left the message.
Uh-huh.
But I know that it wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't directly. I know that I must have been a neighbor who saw
wasn't
it.
One of your direct neighbors,
Right? Because I knew all of them very well. We would have known their voice.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And
I
we
mean,
don't.
like that alone, like that it became gossip at all tells you
Yes.
kind of what you need to know there.
Yes. And so it's just it's
complicity is.
yeah. Like, can you imagine? Can you just imagine what it must have been like for that man to have the thought in his head of like, oh, well, Terry comes over to our house and, and loves our kids and blah, 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 blah. Maybe we'll go over there. And it's like, oh, she lives in Kinnifick.
Yeah, man.
Because he had that thought. And he was like, okay, well, if we go over there, then better make sure no one sees us. That is an idea that's a concept that we never have to think about.
No, because I didn't like going into Kinnifick sometimes. I didn't like going to certain places around there, but it wasn't for anywhere near the same sort of reason that they wouldn't have liked that.
You're like, these roads are really bumpy.
Well, that too, but I'm like, some fucking weird ass rednecks out here.
Well, when you get down,
But it's
you,
me, you know. I don't have to actually worry about the same sorts of things that he would have to worry about.
right. Yeah. Like it's no one, like someone might look at you and judge you, but they're not judging you on the basis of your skin, you know? And yeah, down deep in there, you get to where you find like, oh, this is where the people without social security numbers live. Like there's a, you know,
True.
there's a different rhythm in some of those parts. And
Meth labs.
yeah, and like I remember delivering pizzas out there once, and I just remember driving by this house, and there just wasn't a front door. It just wasn't
empty
there.
void.
And this guy's just sitting there in a chair looking out the front door, and I was very scared at the time. You know, it was very. You just didn't know what you were going to see. Like you were going to see that. And then the next house was going to be like full of monster trucks, like actual monster trucks. And
Yeah.
it was hit or miss, man. You didn't know. And, but yeah, so that's sort of, I think that's my spiel on the Confederate flag. Is there anything you wanted to throw out at that?
I mean, I think you pretty much hit everything. Like, you know, seeing it on bumper stickers and just around town on fucking Dimebag's guitar was always a big one for me. It was always very confusing to me.
Yeah.
I was like, why? There must be something about this that I don't understand. Was sort of my thought when I was 12 or some shit. Like, there must be something about this iconography that I don't get yet.
Right.
That makes it to where he wants it on his guitar.
Right.
What's cool about it? There must be something, right?
Right. And it's really unfortunate that because the positive things that it does represent to some Southern people are things that could be mutually exclusive. Like they could be completely separated from the racism, because I think to some people it's just a symbol of, because Southern pride does not mean racism. It does not have to mean racism.
It doesn't have to, yeah.
It often does when people use those words, but it doesn't have to mean racism. You know, Southern pride could just mean like, I'm proud to, you know, like I don't need to be embarrassed just because I'm not from the city.
That's really how I would describe it more, is like, I'm not embarrassed to be from the South. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, any sort of where I'm from blank pride has always like rung completely false to me, because
Right, because you didn't choose it.
You know, whatever, you didn't do anything to.
Right. Yeah. I kind of feel that way too. But you know, at the same time, I can, if I distance myself and I look at it from the right angle, I can see how there's a niche that symbol fills for, like, okay, well, just because I didn't go to some fancy college and I didn't do this and I didn't do that doesn't mean that I'm less valuable as a person, which is absolutely 1,000% true.
Sure.
You're
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
You're not. It doesn't, like, all humans have intrinsic value. But I wish there was a different symbol that represented that wasn't the symbol used by an army that lost a war over slavery, or rather over states' rights to impose slavery. You know, like,
Yeah.
if there, you know, so, and if you don't, yeah, like, let it go, guys. Let it go.
Like, adopt the fucking General Lee, but without the flag on top, doing a sick corkscrew off the ramp.
Right.
Have that be the flag. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, something like there's a way to do it. You know what I mean?
Certainly a whole, like a litany of things you could pick from.
Right.
Far cooler than this.
Right. Than that. Okay. So there's that. Now then, the other aspect of the racism stuff that we talked about, that we sort of touched on, was like a exposure to, because, you know, in our playlists, you know, there was a very, you know, not a lot of black artists on there.
It was pretty bright in there.
It was pretty bright in there.
A little bit.
And so I wanted to sort of riff on that a little bit, because obviously, I hope it's obvious that I'm not saying that if you didn't listen to black music as a kid, then you're a racist. That's not That's absolutely not what I'm saying. If that's what you got from it, you have probably already stopped listening anyway. So, but I just sort of wanted to sort of riff on that concept and riff on why I think it's important. So the first thing to understand is that there's a history of segregation in radio and in the airwaves in the country, especially in the South. And I'm not going to like unpack all that history. It's there. Go find it. Early R&B was literally called race music. And so, so the idea is that if the only time that you're exposed to black artists or black music is whenever it is performing some type of function to you, like, oh, it's physical music, it's dance music, or it's what I listened to in high school. I listened to rap music to piss my parents off or whatever. But it's not what you listen to. It's not what you consider quote unquote real music or sophisticated music. Then if you don't examine that, that can lead you down these pathways of sort of assuming, well, black people don't make sophisticated music. Black people don't make real music. You know, black people, they're so physical that they're talented. They're just so talented. They're so soulful. Those things are just easy for them. And so it gives you like this mechanism to sort of to fall into these racist tropes, because if you say someone is soulful, it seems like you're complimenting them, right? But oftentimes a compliment is a veiled insult, because what are you saying that they don't have? Oh, they have soul. What do they not have? You're saying they don't have intellect, is what you're really saying. And so, by not being, by sort of, if the environment is such that you're not exposed to, because for all the amazing music that we heard, there was amazing black artists making great music similarly, not the exact same thing or whatever, but we didn't hear that, you know what I mean? And all those things are just as sophisticated or just as intricate, are, just as are incredible high levels of art and whatnot. And so, I think it's important to reflect and to examine, how your exposure on like the art that you're exposed to, how does that determine your tastes, and how does that maybe go into changing your view of people, right? Because if all you know of black people is the art that they make, and the only art of black people that you have heard is music that you listened to when you went to a club, music that you used as some type of functional way, then, whenever you have real feelings, well, you're going to go listen to white artists, because that's the real art, I'm not saying all of these are necessarily true. I'm just saying, like, these are just like little pathways that you need to like point out, because these are things that I've heard people say. Like, it's the kind of thing that would lead to that, like that culminates in, say, like one of my music instructors saying rap isn't music. This was like way before Ben Shapiro. This was in like 2002. It's like rap isn't music because it doesn't have melody and harmony. It's rhythmic chanting, but it's not music. This is my music instructor. This is my mentor telling me this at the time.
A weird distinction to make.
Yeah. And there's absolutely racist ideas wrapped up in that, and so at a minimum, there's classist ideas wrapped up in it,
It's safe to say both, I think.
And so, yeah. And so the other thing I want to sort of add to this is that, again, you not being exposed to black music doesn't mean you're racist. But what it does mean is that you were sort of not the victim, but you were at the mercy of someone else's racist decisions, because maybe it was a radio programmer. Maybe it was a radio programmer who said, oh, well, these people don't like Prince. They won't like, they won't like Stevie Wonder. They won't like this. This isn't for this demographic.
Right.
Or
that was kind of something I wanted to bring up as well, was because we had such a dearth of that in our previous lists, it almost made it, I think it probably came off like, well, the people that I was around when I was hearing this music on this list, they didn't play black music. They didn't know about black music. And that's not what I was trying to get across.
No, they weren't exposed.
Yeah, or maybe they had some and I just didn't fucking hear it.
True.
That could be the case. I don't know.
Sure.
That was just what we sort of...
Right. And when these things have so many layers, right? Like it could be that like, oh, well, that precedent of keeping radio separate. So, like, oh, we're going to hear Glenn Fry, but we're not going to hear Michael Jackson. You're going to hear like Eric Clapton's like hard R&B run, but I never heard a single Michael Jackson song growing up. Wow. I never heard a single one. So like, are you going to tell me that like my mom was liking this like watered down R&B with electric guitar that like Glenn Fry and Don Henley and all these guys were doing in the 80s, but that she would just hated Michael Jackson? I don't think, I'm not going to buy that. You know what I mean? But these things have all sorts of layers, right? Like, so maybe it was a radio programmer making it, or maybe it was a DJ, or maybe it was your grandfather telling your mother that, well, no, I'm not going to buy that record for you. I'm not going to buy the Supremes record for you because there's black people on the front of it.
Right.
And so then your mother doesn't have the chance to develop a relationship with music made by black people, things like that. And so,
I mean, it's a lot of culminations or byproducts of systemic racism,
right? And I guess that's really like the big point, right? That I'm trying to make. It's like this especially is a byproduct of systemic racism, because it has to do with like the historical precedents set with segregating radio and like black music here, white music there.
That's honestly not something I didn't even really know about.
Oh yeah,
until like very, very recently.
For sure.
I mean, looking back, it's pretty obvious, but
for sure, man. I mean, the Dirty the movie Dirty Dancing does a good job of sort of like portraying that.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the whole thing was, it was like,
I don't remember Dirty Dancing very much.
So there's a whole like like a two worlds thing going on where like there's the dance instructors that go and do the nice ballroom and the stuff for like all the rich people. But then what the dancers themselves do is they go down to a basement and they do dirty dancing.
They get dirty, yeah. Christina Aguilera.
And so
ahead of her time.
So ahead of her time.
After her time.
Yeah, she was so ahead of her time because time is a flat circle. She went all the way back. Yeah. So, but just that idea of like, that, well, that it's another world, and over there it's dirty and it's dangerous and it's the dance that black people are doing, and stuff like that. And there's like, all of those are just such loaded concepts, especially for white people's minds and perceptions in the 60s and in the 70s, whenever our parents when our parents' tastes were being formed, which would then go on to form our tastes, Yeah. And
a lot of stuff like that was romanticized in a lot of ways.
Oh, for sure.
Sort of became okay, and even aspirational,
right,
in some ways.
And so like, I guess like my thesis, what I'm trying to say is that I think that our parents would have, if they would have been exposed, like if it just would have all been thrown out at the same time, I think that we would have grown up hearing, a little more Stevie Wonder or a little more of this. If my dad liked Santana and Black Sabbath, then he would have liked Funkadelic. I don't know if you've listened to those early Funkadelic records, but they're fucking crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like if he liked anything psychedelic, he would have liked that too. He just wasn't exposed to it.
Yeah.
And so, or Marvin, Marvin Gaye or whatever,
I bet I would have been into some Earth, Wind, and Fire when I was a little kid.
Because they're undeniably amazing. September is one of the best songs ever written. Anyway, you can't go wrong with any Earth, Wind, and Fire. Just put their whole discography and hit shuffle. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And so, but anyway, so this is the other thing, right? Because this is, I think, the last thing I want to say. All right, Bill Withers. Okay, familiar with Bill Withers? Ain't No Sunshine.
Yes, absolutely. Just not the name, apparently.
Okay, so this is the thing. Bill Withers is the talk the talk, walk the walk of the ideals that our parents claimed to respect and idolize so much. Okay? So Bill motherfucking Withers, 9 years in the Navy, okay, was working in assembly plants, used his own money to make his demo tapes, okay? And he kept his motherfucking factory job, okay? Because he's like, the music industry is a fickle mistress. I'm going to keep my day job. So I'm talking Ain't No Sunshines on the radio, okay? Ain't No Sunshine goes motherfucking gold, okay? It goes gold, all right? And this guy's still at his factory job making bathrooms for 747s. That's like the blue collar mythos right there. You know, it's like, well, you know, just looking at making songs like it's a craft, and like, I had this idea for a story. I wanted to figure out how to do this, you know, but I'm still a hardworking man. Right. You know, like that is the exact thing that our parents' generation claim to, like Bill Withers should have been, like we should have heard stories growing up about like, you hear that song? You know, he made that music and he kept his factory job. Like that's what they, you know what I mean? Like, because he knows that if you're a hardworking man, that's better than being some rock star or some this or some that, you know, or whatever.
That's that ideal that you would hear about.
Yeah, and so, yeah, like I think whatever record label was on, I think I read that they made like a gold-plated toilet seat and gave it to him because he was technically making bathrooms, which that might have been like a fucking veiled insult.
Yeah, I was like, is that a super slap in the face, or is that like? I wonder how you felt about that.
Yeah, that might have been like a.
Did he put that on his wall, or did he shit it in it today?
It might have been like a, hey motherfucker, will you quit this job and go tour and make us some goddamn money? That might have been what that was. But anyway, so yeah. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, I think we hit most of what I was probably going to say. Yeah.
All right. Cool. So the pin I want to put in that is like, you know, dig what you dig, and don't be ashamed to dig what you dig, because whatever music got into you, you know, affected your childhood or affected you at any time and that you love, then love it, man, because it's all amazing. Okay. But just know that your tastes weren't formed in a vacuum.
Right.
They happened in a cultural context and forces that are at work that are not your choice. And so you just be aware of that. But that should not diminish your love of what you know, the amount that you love the music that you love. Okay. I'm not trying to, you shouldn't feel like, still listen to Pantera and love Pantera. Like
I'm still going to probably go home and play the first few notes of like Sweet Home Alabama. Like I'm still probably going to do that.
Because it's amazing music. And you still should. Just know that using that symbolism is a little problematic.
Just be cognizant of where that shit came from and
yeah,
the sort of place that was spawned from.
Yeah. So, all right. Done with racism.
Or I really thought you were just gonna like throw that shit across the room.
Dude, no, the real record's in here. Fuck that.
Okay.
No. Okay, so just wanted to come on, do a quick outro. I'm not totally happy with how we ended that. And I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that, you know, acknowledge the privilege, you know, like how the you know, Robert and I we have the privilege of deciding what level of that what level we choose to engage with problematic art. we're able to sort of, oh, well, that influenced me and that really means a lot to me. So I'm going to do the work to get over it. And we wouldn't have that option if we were part, or we wouldn't have that option the same way if we were part of the group that the artist was being bigoted towards. And so for, me to say at the end of it something like, and done with racism, done with racism, that's real privileged and insensitive and kind of ignorant. Because that's how we can interact with this. Obviously I meant done with the topic for for that particular show, but we are able to choose how, we're able to like, all right, well, let's talk about racism. And then we can, when we're done, we can then put it aside because the racism won't find us. And that's not true for everyone. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And so, and there is a difference when it comes to artists and what they put out. There's a difference between an artist that happened to use a Confederate flag on an album cover 40 years ago and an artist that is actively saying bigoted things, or that has said bigoted things from the stage or has written songs about bigoted, hateful things. And so I think you as a listener, should interrogate those things individually and consider how you want to, I personally think it's up to you. If you never want to listen to a certain artist again because of some things that they've said or some things you found out they said, I think that that's okay. If you want to engage with their art, but you never want to see them live again, I think that's okay. I think it's up to you. I don't think there's one right answer. I think it's going to vary. I think it's going to vary from artist to artist and situation to situation. So anyway, I just wanted to add a little more subtlety. I felt like we kind of wrapped a bow around it at the end a little more, like glossed over it a little bit more than we should. Kind of like, okay, well, just acknowledge that racism exists and then go back to loving everything just the way that you should. And that's not what I mean. I think you should actively interrogate these things. I think you should actively engage and listen to the lyrics. If you find out about an artist saying some racist, bigoted things on stage, I think you should watch that footage, and I think you should consider if this is an artist that you want to continue supporting, giving your money to. And I think you should hold them accountable. And I think you should criticize them for the things that they do wrong. So anyway, I think that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed, a nice little window into my thought process on these types of things. So, all right, adios.